mga katribu, welcome to another episode of Daily Tribune's Straight Talk, where we discuss current issues that matter to each of us. This is Gigie Arcilla.
I'm Chito, Lozada. Good morning. We are live on Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now on YouTube.
This morning's guest is a lawyer, a Filipino politician, a diplomat, and a journalist for 3 decades who is irrepressible, articulate, very independent-minded, and extraordinarily prolific in writing. He previously served as the Secretary of Foreign Affairs under the Duterte administration from 2018 to 2022. He is now the Philippine Ambassador Extraordinary and plenipotentiary to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Please welcome Ambassador Teodoro Locsin Jr. Welcome to Straight Talk, Ambassador. Thank you for granting this.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me here. It's a wonder. I'm looking at your facilities. It's simple, but it works. That's something I never had in my life. Something because we had to do diplomacy during COVID by Zoom, and well, this is what I learned as a politician. I would always ask, because we congressmen, we travel, so we're helped by DFA personnel around the world, and then when it comes time to the budget, I'd ask them, "Why aren't you asking for anything?" And they said, "Wag na." What do you mean, wag na? Wag na, sir. If we ask for anything, then it becomes a problem because you have to explain, etc., etc. She says, we live off you, we politicians. Can't you do it? No, we won't. He said, like that. And so that's what I got. When I had to do Zoom, I had a little camera, which eventually disappeared. So I had to borrow a camera, and then laptop, an old laptop. That's how we operated. And that should change, but never mind. They seem to be able to, I believe it is the best performing department in government. It has been for a long time. So, well, apparently they can do more with less, so okay.
All right, so good morning, Ambassador. Allow me to kick off the first question. What has kept the former Secretary of Foreign Affairs busy since after June 30 up to August 2022 when you were appointed?
After that, what I did was, number one, go swimming, which is what I like to do. I'm not a great swimmer, but I never stopped. So I did that, and then it was also time to start reading again. This is I don't think it makes you wiser, but it keeps you informed that there are other points of view. And also, sooner or later, I'm going to end up writing again as a journalist. And the only way to learn how to write is by your ear. And the way you hear you learn how to write by your ear is when you're reading. You don't know it, but your brain is actually reciting the prose. So my first qualification for a book, I'd rather have a book that's half right than one that's fully right and incompetently written. So, because that enters your ear. And when you start writing, it comes out exactly as you read, bad writing. So always confine your writing to what's very well written. And there are a few classics for that. There's a guy called Somerset Maugham. He did Summing Up, the one on Van Gogh, Moon and Sixpence. And the thing is this, the way he learned how to write, because he's the only guy who was the most popular novelist of the 40s, 50s, 60s. He said, I actually am a lousy, artist. Then how come you're selling? They're selling. Well, because I know how to write well. And how did you learn? Because my parents, I think their parents were diplomats. And he said, I knew French when I was young, and I knew English. So I would get an English book by a very great writer, I'd translate it into French. Then I get from the French great writer and translate it into English. And my ear developed. That's what I got that. It's in the ear. Okay. So, and in the end, writing well is the best revenge.
Oh,
How many languages do you?
Oh no,
Yeah,
I just have English. I
English.
have terrible Tagalog, which is Jojo Bina would bang his head when I would give a speech. But I said, hey, I'm getting more votes than you. So, and then Spanish of my grandmother.
And you're fluent in Spanish.
I wouldn't call myself fluent. My Spanish is mestizo Spanish, but we understand each other.
I only know Spanish because of the units
The units
in
in the
college.
school.
Actually, that's the real way. I'll tell you who really knows Spanish. Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. When she speaks Spanish, I shut up. I don't say anything because for sure sa akin mali. It's classical Spanish, and there's nothing you can do about it. She's very studious, and I worked with her. Wow, she's really smart. I can tell you.
You worked with the former president for more than 6 years, right? Even beyond her term.
Well, she was there 9 years. GMA, di ba? Because she came in when Erap, ano, and then she finished that term, but she was already entitled to run again. So she got full 6 years, 9 years. That's the longest.
After
Yeah, and I can tell you, boy, she really took the tough decisions. When the global financial crisis hit and the New York banks decided to rob the world, and I can tell you, the decision was the only way we could take the hit was to raise taxes, and I was in Congress. So and I led the expanded value-added tax. Very controversial. That means the prices of goods that, remember, a value-added tax is a tax against the poor, but you have to raise it. You could tax gasoline. Everybody uses that, but yeah, even the poor use that. But the thing was that when you do that, people know that you are hurting them. And she was very aware. When you pass this, I will be hit. I will be hit like anything, but it has to be done. Okay, and she did it. She took the hit. And what happened after the global financial crisis? We were adjudged by the World Bank, IMF, as the best performing economy, such as it was, but still the best performing of all the countries in the world. But of course, the price was public hated her. And by the way, when I passed it, maneuvered the passage of that bill, I was very humble. I gave full credit to my colleagues, and they lost the election. I said, no, it has nothing to do with me. It's them. These geniuses really put it together. Talo sila.
When that was passed, were you on your last term as congressman?
No, not yet. I think I still had one more term. But, 2000. Yeah, it's 2008. Yeah, it's my last term.
Okay.
But they were still running, and I gave them full credit for it.
Do you think if you
Humility.
do you think if you could run again that time, do you think you'll
Well,
make it?
I threw them under the bus. I guess I could. I would stand there and say, I tried my best to lower the value-added tax.
the Recto got hit.
Huh? Oh, my good friend.
AVAT.
I'll tell you.
AVAT Recto.
He is really smart and studious.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
wow.
senator?
Okay, kasi guwapo yan, di ba? You would think, he'll just get by. Wow. When he studies, and he does. Sometimes when I'm swimming, we lived in the same place. I would be swimming, and he'd be swimming, but always there's a table there, and experts are explaining it to him. Big guys, really. Yeah, I know he was one of those who was hit for the nation-saving,
For the nation-saving decision.
for the EVAT. I know, but
Well, you were appointed by President Bongbong Marcos on August 30, 2022. Why this post? Can you share why the president chose you for the position?
but no, I wasn't expecting anything, and he just said, That's it. Because we would meet with Babe Romualdez, because he and I were basically handled our relations with China and the United States, and it was a great. Babes did a great job, a great success, and we had to keep building on that. And so I would meet him. And then one day he just simply said, "You're going to London." That's it.
Babe Romualdez.
Yeah. The babe said, "Babe naman, when I was in the last remaining weeks, I extended his term to stay in Washington, and he had actually sent his furniture home." And then,
Only to find out
yeah,
that.
and then when we were there, I said, "Oh, Teddy boy, you go to London, and you stay in Washington." Huh? So he did a great job, because in that time, Duterte, the way he played the Americans, it's actually brilliant, I tell you. Yung parang, a friend of mine used to say, is Chinese, suntok yakap. Suntok yakap. There's nothing that creates more a sense of dependency, parang Stockholm syndrome,
Yeah.
when you do that. And he did it so well. But remember, every time he does suntok, Babes is in Washington. And the one thing about Washington is, you hit them, you're finished. I mean, they really don't talk to you, etc. I tried to stop the abolition of the U.S. bases, but it went through. And the DFA suffered 15 years for that. I mean, yeah, sure, you're assigned in Washington. You just better be good in cleaning your apartment, because you're not invited.
So that was a case of
But
Ambassador.
Babes Romualdez was there, but then since he and I played good cop, bad cop on both sides, with both powers, one day he's the darling of Washington, next day he's not. He really took the hit. With me, I'm okay. I'm here in Manila
So
anyway.
it was like, a dance of cha-cha.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. But I remember at the end of it all, Duterte said, what the hell? Austin came, the Secretary of Defense of the United States, and he was there, and he was expected to say some things, and he didn't. No? So Duterte called me and Babe aside and said, "Well, I didn't hear anything that you guys said he would say." I guess he can't really say it because, it's pretty hard. You are, after all, just a cabinet member. By the way, cabinet members have no existence when the president is.
Is there?
Yeah. I'll tell you that protocol. And he said, he can't. I guess he can't. I says, okay, hell. Then he goes back in and then very casually tells Austin, "Oh, that visiting forces agreement you want? You want it restored? Go see Teddy Boy tomorrow." That. And this is the way to do it, because it showed that, fine, don't push us around, because we can as easily restore it as take it out. And so when I was in Washington and I was meeting the very powerful Foreign Relations Committee with a very powerful senator, so I said, "Oh, you got the visiting forces agreement. You got everything back. So it's going to be all normal from now on?" He looked at me and says, "No. It will never be normal again, because now we respect you." Which is, wow. And so one thing about Duterte, he'll take all the hit, etc. He never asks for any consolation. But this time, our last cabinet meeting, I told him that story. That's what he said. "Now we respect you." That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
And he took a hit, everywhere. And I have to say this, because when he was, we had already gotten the VFA back, Babes and I, and all of that. One day he says to me, "Remember my vow, I'll never go to the United States." Well, since you and Babe have already given everything back, I don't see why I shouldn't. So we started talking about the ASEAN-US Summit.
All
Supposed
right.
to be February.
I was there.
You're there, huh? Okay. So he says, I'll go, I'll go. So we said, we'll go. But then Indonesia said, no, 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 like that's the wrong date. So it became March. And then Thailand said, no, 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 that's the wrong date. It became April. And then they
Got
said,
moved.
well, you know,
Moved
the
the
other
last.
ASEAN countries said we're busy. So let's make it May. And the president
By
told
that
me,
time,
you
elections.
know, I'll be a ghost in Washington. Why will you be a ghost? You're president till June. Well, Teddy boy, they'll know the next president by then.
Yeah.
No, you and babe, you go. So I went. And then Biden, for the first time, used Washington, Abraham Lincoln's dining room, etc. And all the leaders of ASEAN were there. All of them each gave a spoke. And Biden looks up the table, and Babes and I are there, and says, "Gentlemen, at the end, you have anything? Yeah, please say something." I can't. I'm just a cabinet member. A cabinet member is nothing. It's a president who should be in this table. But then I told him the story, what he said. And you know, how can I speak? My president said he'd be a ghost by now, and I am but the shadow of a ghost. And Biden said, well, let's hear it from the shadow. I felt like a Marvel Comics hero.
From the
So
shadow.
what was your speech?
I told him everything. He says, among the things I said is, this is the man that the West has accused of being a dictator, wanting to be a dictator. When I left him, he was packing his things, and he still had 3 months in office.
Oh,
I hope you understand that. So,
So that's the real man, Duterte.
so now that you'll be posted in, you used to be just in Manila, now you'll be posted in the UK. So what are your expectations,
Well,
Ambassador?
my first and primary expectations is in COVID, the COVID thing, is I saw the role of our nurses, both in the United Kingdom, everywhere else in the world, in the United States. And I'm going to take very good care of them. That's the greatest honor. Because you know what? They gave this country the highest honor England could ever give.
Right.
One, they were among the highest casualties, so they gave their best. And what did England do? Awarded them very high distinction. And that's not something that we can say, well, we deserved it. No, we did not. The one who deserved it were our nurses. They're the only ones. They're there. Took the hit all the time.
But based on the news, Ambassador, that I've been hearing from, I have friends in the UK, they say that just last night I was talking to a friend that, for the month of January, almost every day there are strikes in the UK. Buses, transport people, drivers,
Inflation.
even teachers.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Well, you're probably wondering what I'm still doing here. But the reason I'm still here is, in fact, we have no residence, right? Each one of us who's appointed has to look for a place to rent. So I'm working on that, and hardly anything happens over Christmas. So I was told, so okay. But all of those things were challenges that I'll tell you, our nurses were always there for the English people. That's for sure. And they also understand that the English frontliners, the other foreign workers who are in the health sector, everybody did. And if the English who have the right to strike would bring up the issue of how about paying them commensurately to the work and risk they take.
They take, yeah.
I know that's quite a dilemma, and that's why I want to be there for them. Because if you don't sympathize with the strike of your fellow workers, what are you? You're a scab. If you do, you may not be welcome. But I think given their sacrifice and their talents, they will always be welcome.
Yeah.
And,
And I heard that they don't even, turn the heaters on because, the high price of
That's
gas
right, yeah.
and electricity.
The
And
nurses, Filipino nurses.
most of them, yeah, even the Filipinos are not health workers in UK, and they say that just to save on money, they just eat once a day. They just settle for coffee and bread.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. That's
Expensive.
that's what's happening there. And I said that and they do this. They also, I think, are waiting for me because in the pandemic, it was a rather universal feeling. The different departments said, "I don't ban the deployment of nurses." I was just looking at them and says, and then they brought it up in the cabinet. I says, no, you ban it. Why? I said, these people have worked hard. I know for a fact that nobody pays for their education. I know for a fact that nurses in the old days and maybe up to now pay hospitals to work in a hospital. Can you imagine that? I mean, not even the slaves in the American South paid to be a slave. Okay? Huh? That's quite a distinction. I said, no. And then finally, just in case you get sick, well, I hope when you get sick, you die. Duterte said, "Boy, relax." No, really. I mean, how dare you? You want a reserve corps of nurses standing by in case we get sick. Reserve corps are paid. Now, if you're prepared to pay 150,000 to every nurse that will stay behind to protect us in case we get sick, okay, then you can buy. But even then, the right to travel is a constitutional right. So you would be violating the Constitution. You can't do that. And a person has to go where their skills are valued and commensurately paid.
So that's the reason why they took the.
So they remember, because every time there would be that, they'd hear me insulting somebody, and they said, this guy's, it just feels wrong. Then if I don't want to get sick because there are no nurses here, then I should be careful. I should wear a mask. Finally, after all of this big talk, General Esperon, another one of those guys I do good cop, bad cop with, says, why is everybody getting angry? Do you know that we have 400,000 nursing graduates? Some of them are actually working in the armed forces, and it has nothing to do with medicine. He said, yeah, and they're jobless. It's Jesus. So maybe, I think
So
that ended.
that made them realize that, to lift the ban.
Oh, yeah, to lift the ban. I mean, that's ridiculous. I don't understand why with all I'm a lawyer, and when we have nothing to do, we usually take up any cause just to suit for practice. But how come nobody picked up the case of fighting the ban on the constitutional ground? It's your right to travel. Worse, to travel to earn a living? To stay alive? Jesus. Well, it's as if, wow, anyway, I don't want to get angry again.
Yeah. So that was some interesting answers. Ambassador, we would like to hear more from you after we take a short break. Straight Talk will be back, and stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Nasa kamay mo ang swerte, ngunit hindi ito isang laro na para lang sa'yo. Dahil bukod sa pag-asang maging milyonaryo, ang pagtangkilik mo sa loto at iba pang produkto ng PCSO ay nakakalikom ng pondo para sa mga programang pangkalusugan, tulong at serbisyong medikal at kawang-gawa.
Lahat ng minimithi makakamtan sa PCSO.
centers, pati sa mga parties may online pa at app. You can buy it with your fingers. Still don't remittance and more. Online shopping, you can buy it all. Di magpadala, you can buy it all. Anong pera transaction, you can buy it all.
Sabayan ang pagbabago ng mundo for all your pera transactions, all new Bayad.
With Globe, our steps can lead us to millions of doors opening, millions of paths unfolding, and millions of reasons to keep going. Now's the time to be with a network that gets better every day for you.
Every time I'm on the road, I can expect high performance from Phoenix Fuels. Now with Pulse technology, delivers enhanced power and acceleration to make every trip come alive.
You're still watching Straight Talk. Still with us is His Excellency Ambassador Teodoro Locsin.
So, Ambassador, what are you bringing to your new post? In your previous position as permanent representative of the UN, and the more recent one as Secretary of Foreign Affairs. Has this post given you adequate preparation to the one that you have now?
I don't think of the previous things I did as qualifying me for the next unknown thing I will do, because every position is different. I was taken to be the UN, and I remember how I was appointed. And one day I get a call from Big Bong Medjaldea, and he says, "President will see you across the river." So I went across the river. And he talked about his policies, his complete detestation of the drug trade, and how people like OFWs work their fingers to the bone to give money to the children back home, who then give it to the drug dealers. So it's really like, it's showing me the matrix of. It was already pretty late. So I said, I didn't say anything, except telling me like this. No? And so I stood up and I said, "Sir, you're busy. Call it a night." And then I bowed. Turns to Bing Bong and he said, "Hapon?" And I got out. 2 weeks later, I get a letter. "Oh, by the way, you are supposed to go to the UN." And then that's really how it was. Prepare. And when I was in the UN, I was in the auditing section, and it's really boring. And listening to the finances of the UN, the phone rings in my pocket, and the Australian representative says, "She's the one giving the lecture. Answer it." And really, that's how it happened. So I stood up and I went outside and took out the phone. I said, "Hello?" And I says, "Riboy." Yeah.
So it was the president.
Alan wants to go back to Congress. He's got other plans, and so the job is open, and I'd like you to take it. Because my wife loves New York. So I was a little scared. Thank you. Fuck.
So what was that?
That's it. So the Australian said, "You couldn't say no, could you?" "How do you know all this?" "We're not Australians for nothing."
So meaning the
So
eavesdrop.
then you do the job you can. I bring things like my lessons I learned from doing the news and learning to speak no longer than 2.5 minutes. compressing your thought because there's always
It's
another day.
useful. Yes.
And then from there I end up in foreign affairs, and I think I had about a couple of months, and then the pandemic hit, and people say, "Wow, nalugi ka," kasi basically yung foreign affairs mostly a political appointment. Your first job is to make sure you get a million-miler certificate, so you just travel around the world. You cannot travel. I said, I don't think so. I think staying in the Philippines and being on top of the repatriation of Filipinos and expatriation of foreigners stuck here and helping whoever we can. The only trips I really made were to China because you can keep it controlled with a small plane and land. And when we land there, it's really contained. I would be put in a luxury resort. Naman na, 4 seasons. Daming swimming pool, pero walang tubig. And then, time to eat. Then lunch, and then somebody goes there with the tray covered in saran wrap, like this. So I don't know why they listened to the West and opened up that fast. Americans, they were all saying, look at that, people are suffering. Of course you suffer in a pandemic, in a lockdown. Because you're locked down. But when I was in those resorts, I would look over the wall, because we were never allowed to go out. And I'd look at the rest of the city, and a lot of people had no masks. Then I said, what is this? Then I realized, my God, what China has done is thrown a mask over the entire city. Every day, everyone there has no COVID. Mask it. Okay, this guy Locsin's coming in, then you lock him up in the resort. And I remember once I went there, and there was a very important conference that we actually haven't finished on that issue. And we were in charge of China. We were China coordinator for the ASEAN summits on the code of conduct. It wasn't moving. It wasn't moving. And the latest, it wasn't moving when there was no COVID. It wasn't moving when the COVID hit. And so that's just an excuse. So I said to my counterpart, I'll tell you what, I can get planes. My friend is, Capitan, and I can get a plane, and then I'll pick up everybody, bring them to Manila, and then we can meet and finally finish the code of conduct in one blow. And he starts laughing because I'm still in the room. We're going to meet later face to face. We're still in the room, and he's there on the other side, still on a monitor, and he starts laughing. What's funny about that? He says, because your flight engineer has COVID. And wow, then people came in, they put a PPE on me, and that's it. And then we went to the car, and I was driven back to my plane. That's it. That's what they did. And then they listened to the West. They knew what they were doing.
Did you ever get COVID during the time?
No,
of the
no, I did not. And then once I tested positive, but long after that already. That's from meeting friends at a restaurant. But I didn't have any symptoms at all.
Ambassador, getting back to the code of conduct, why hasn't it moved from the time that you were there?
Well, there's really...
Is China reluctant?
No, well, there was a theory that I had, and I never used it, because that's not my job to use my theories. My job is, I represent the Philippines, coordinator for China to get the COC passed. But I said this on TV before I was even there. I said, the fact that you have a code of conduct with China is already a recognition of China's predominant role in the South China Sea. Now, let's get one thing clear. The reason it's called the South China Sea is because of the English, because they ruled the world. And they would say, oh, this piece of water, it's south of China, so let's call it the South China Sea. It's not because it belonged to China. And then I said, the whole time that I went to China in 1967. We were the first to enter China. It had the bamboo curtain. I went through the Cultural Revolution, where Xi Jinping suffered tremendously. And what I know is that the Chinese didn't want to step out of their mainland. stay away. Then comes it's only later when they had overcome the Cultural Revolution and it started rebuilding China with the partnership of the United States, because the United States was going to use them to fight Russia. So you make China rich enough to build up its own weaponry, etc. And then that's the counterweight on the Eurasian continent to the Soviet Union, not Russia. So, that's, I don't push it. But the code of conduct was precisely to prevent disputes, collisions or allisions, that's another word for that, in the South China Sea from escalating out of control. But still, every country, and it's normal, we use anything that is needed by another country, especially a great power, to our advantage. We squeeze. We squeeze and squeeze, nothing's happened until now.
Until now.
Except for one thing.
What's that?
We lost our reef.
What?
We lost our reef, right? In the last year of Noy Noy. We lost our reef because our Navy, which never backs off, I'll tell you that. These guys, considering how lousy their weaponry is, they'll fight all the time. So in that reef, they faced off with the Chinese warship. And talagang wouldn't move. So then the Americans said, stand down, both of you. So they stood down. Then they said, okay, now withdraw, both of you. We withdrew. China did not. And the guy in Washington said, oh, well, such is life. Really, that's how it started.
Seriously?
Yeah, well, that's really how it started. In fact, I saw that guy.
Is that a
but
mistake,
we're all
or-
diplomats. No, I don't know. Well, at that
lost in
time,
translation.
Obama had the pivot to Asia, and China was still seen as a major partner of the United States, of its prosperity, progress, and power. They would be like junior partners, but smarter and harder working. So that's really what the plan was. And then Chinese felt, well, we need our place in the sun. We don't want that because this happens to be our place in the sun, but you're entitled to think of that. The Americans thought of it in their time. So that's where the tension is now. But really, we lost that because they told us to back off.
And we
And
draw.
we did.
And we did. It's just that.
That's really what happened. Actually, the other one did not. And then they started to
Build,
they
those
started to reclaim it,
structures.
and it's now like a military base. Maybe until I see it, I won't say it because I don't trust news. They filled it up. Of course, to reclaim that you need sand, diba?
And it came
Where
from
do you
us.
think they got the sand from? From our barangays.
Yeah.
Which, on the other hand, was going to be used against us. And I said, wait a minute. The sand is ours also? My God, thank you for building it. It's ours. That's,
So,
but
Could we have stopped it, or is that the way that
remember, if you,
the ball runs?
what does it mean to stop? They're like that. Either one withdraws or they start firing. Sure, for one cannon shot from us, we'll get 50 from them. But what does that do? That triggers the Mutual Defense Treaty. And that's, what that is. That's a whole conflict. And one point of view I've said, in any fight over that issue, South China Sea, the theater of war will not be San Francisco. It's too far. Believe it or not, distance matters. John Mearsheimer came up with what he called the stopping power of water. Once you're crossing, like going by air, it goes fast. Once you're on water, there's only as slow as possible before you get to your by that time, you blew them out of the water. That's the stopping power of water. Therefore, in any war, the battlefield is the South China Sea. The Chinese coast, the Philippines, and whoever gets involved. I mean, even in a standoff fight like that, guess who suffers? Well, all of us here in this part of the world. And no one's been able to dispute that. Oh, we have new weapons. We can do it in seconds. Yeah, sure. But they can counter in seconds too. Because the one thing the Americans are very good at is weaponry. There, there's a book called Why Why the West Still Rules or something like that. And they said the United States, it's a 10-year-old book, is 500 years ahead of the rest of the planet in the advance of its weaponry. Tomorrow, it will be 500 years ahead of the rest of the world. A year from now, it will be 500 years. In other words, that 500 lead just keeps going on to eternity.
Constant.
So a fight like that, nobody's stupid, especially China, because they have their pride, they have their claims. And by the way, a claim, we have rights to that to our EEZ. They have a claim. I never, in dealing with them, say, "Oh, your claim is wrong." Why would I do that? They're Chinese. Of course, they think it's right. Just like they will never tell me, "Oh, your victory is wrong." No, never said that. But how do you work together with a claim conflicting with the right? So that's really the situation. They want to have their place in the sun. The United States does not. And there's only one thing, there's this one thing to be said for the United States. The United States, from the time it became an imperial power, wanted to be the world hegemon, the master of the world for liberty. They never cared to rule anybody. You know, the minute they got us from the Spanish-American War, they wanted to sell us to Germany. Can you
Germany?
imagine if we were sold
That's
to
the first
Germany?
time
That
I
was
heard of
World War I Germany. Those guys, let me put it this way. I think they killed half of Namibia when they took Namibia as a colony. I mean, they just like target practice. Can you imagine if they got us? Buti na, there was this guy who was against any American foreign president, Jennings Bryan. And there's a movie, Spencer Tracy and this other guy, Inherit the Wind. The guy who was, but he's fundamentalist. But he said, no, we cannot allow the Philippines to be sold. I am against owning the Philippines. I'm against ruling the Philippines, but you cannot sell them to a monarchy or an imperial power. At worst, okay, we'll take care of them under a democracy. And they gave us democracy at once. So that's the difference, you know. There's such a thing as being master, but master for liberty, all they want is, we're number one, and don't challenge that. Do what you want with yourselves. We'll never tell you what to do. We're not even interested in what you're doing. So what's that?
We could have been German speaking.
If we were alive, that's the problem. But Namibia, well, I don't want to say it was a good experience because
Why Germany?
the records were, the Germans were late coming for empire. So because they were only united in 1870, the British had taken this, the French had taken that, Spaniards took it all in 1500. But and by the way, Spaniards held on to it for a long time. They were really good fighters. But you know, the thing is that it is only the United States that says, just as long as you recognize what they are,
Correct.
go ahead and do things as you want. Other imperial powers will kill you, will exploit you until you die, will use you for slavery, and extract all the wealth from it. But the one good thing sometimes from all that evil, when I was in the UN, I would look at the Namibian representative, bland as anything, surrounded by Africans. The next year, there's a change of ambassador.
Yeah.
He was black, the ambassador, surrounded by blonde Germans. So they, in the end, learned to live together. And okay, it's always sad to know about atrocities, but in the end, it doesn't justify the atrocity, but it's nice to know that something good came out of it. And boy, that was really something. What a spectacle.
Rest in peace.
Going back to the China, you mentioned about China. Is it the reason why the hundreds of diplomatic protests did not prosper?
No, they don't. They're not supposed to prosper. They believe it's theirs, and we know it's ours because we won. We went to court, and we won it. But I myself, when I guess I brought, when I took over the UN, and diplomatic protests would be filed, and I said, "Isn't that like throwing paper at a brick wall?" But then somebody, the Susie Natividad, I always surrounded myself with the smart women in the DFA who are very strict with me, and said, "No, that's a diplomatic instrument. When you file that, it's on record that you protest that incursion into your territory. If you don't, you're basically acknowledging maybe they're right. So you just keep doing it. It's not supposed to win, but it keeps your right fresh." I know some traitors are saying that, oh, it's useless. What did it achieve us? Well, we kept our right alive. True. If we stop doing that, okay, I will accept those who say diplomatic protests are useless. If I see those cowards dressed like our soldiers in camouflage and going straight for the Chinese ship. But any Filipino, whoever says that's useless, and is not prepared to wear camouflage and drive a gunboat at the Chinese ship, it's just a goddamn coward. And I can't stand cowards.
Correct.
Okay, so before we ask the ambassador about the book you raved about on Twitter. So there was this book that you rave about on Twitter that that people should read before they engage in geopolitical conversation. So we'll be right back, and we'll hear about the ambassador's favorite book on when we come back.
And what was that?
Nasa kamay mo ang swerte, ngunit hindi ito isang laro na para lang sa'yo. Dahil bukod sa pag-asang maging milyonaryo, ang pagtangkilik mo sa loto at ipapang produkto ng PCSO ay nakakalikom ng pondo para sa mga programang pangkalusugan, tulong at serbisyong medikal at kawang-gawa.
Kasal, lahat ng minimithi makakamtan sa PCSO.
Iba ng panahon, dami ng bago ngayon. Pati ang mundo natin, well, nagbago na rin. Buti ang bayan, bigger, better na. You can buy it to centers, pati sa mga parties may online pa at app. You can buy it with your fingers, still don't remittance and more. Online shopping, you can buy it all. Di magpadala, you can buy it all. Anumang pera transaction, you can buy it all.
Sabayan ang pagbabago ng mundo for all your pera transactions, all new Bayan.
Welcome back to Straight Talk. Here with us still is Ambassador Teodoro Locsin. So, what is it, briefly, Ambassador, what is it in the book that, people wanting to engage in, geopolitical...
Yes, I came to know him, became a friend. He visited me here, Bruno Macaes, and The Dawn of Eurasia. He has written other books on China. His mission, I think, was to make the world consider the new arena for great power politics and progress and economic progress. And that's the largest landmass. Is that an original insight? I would give special credit to Mackinder, who said that who controls Eurasia will control the world. At a time when Russia was in chaos, China was in chaos, the Middle East was being ravaged by the Western powers for oil, Africa was a mess. But in that part, that Macaes, there was, but yet they said, just geography will tell you that whoever, if they they fix their act, it will happen. China has done that. They've fixed their act. I have been a long student of the Chinese Civil War. The people who raised me were part of the Civil War. The Chinese who were here, the great Chinese families, had fled that civil war because they lost. They were nationalist Chinese. They were Kuomintang against the Kuchantang. And the heroes of my generation, my fathers and the others, were those like Zhao Enlai, Chen Yi, Edgar Snow. In fact, in 1967, when it was closed, I went there with my father and met the guys who had done the Long March. And you could feel, I remember they took us to the University of Beijing. We have a way to light up Tiananmen Square. Okay. So we went to the university. There's this engineer. And he had a light bulb about as big as this studio. He says, when you screw this light bulb on, and switch on the light, Tiananmen Square will be lit.
That's how you light up.
Okay, I said, "No, that's ridiculous," but I didn't say anything. Just imagine this guy's in the middle of a cultural revolution, chaos everywhere, but they don't stop thinking of how to do it. And eventually what? They commercialized solar power. They did all of that. But if you didn't have those beginnings and that instinct of the Chinese to keep innovating and innovating, and they're supposed to be the race that doesn't like to change, right? Well, that's wrong. They were innovators.
Innovation.
It was the imperial system. Wrong. It was the dynastic system of China. I was the one who told the Chinese foreign minister, he said, you know, we're not really imperialistic. I know that. Because there's no such thing as a Chinese empire. Huh? I said, yes, because for the past 3,000 years, China has been trying to consolidate one nation. That's all. They're all Chinese. And that's what they're doing. That's not empire. You had a chance at empire in the 1500s. Or earlier than that. Zheng He, the Chinese admiral, who sent a giant fleet to Africa, went around to India, to Africa, brought back giraffes. And the emperor, instead of, well, what can you do? That's quite an achievement. But the minute Zheng He died, he abolished the fleet, dismantled it. We don't need anything from the rest of the world. And I don't want them coming here.
Is that
Imagine. And
until
then,
now,
you think you could have fought that armada? The depiction of some of their warships, huge. They were like the aircraft carriers compared to the galleons. And that's what they had. But they says, no, they look in because they think everything is the best in China. Well, they should have said that to the poor. But still, the Chinese poor probably ate more than the European poor of that time.
They have a replica of that sheep in I don't know if it's in Beijing, it's somewhere. A replica of that sheep that we were talking
Oh,
about.
they do, huh?
Yeah,
Wow,
they
that's
do.
what, okay. I missed that.
Yeah.
Well, that's because it was COVID. So in the time I was visiting China during the COVID, I never went to Beijing because they had locked it down. Quite correct.
They're still locked down
They're still locked down.
till now.
Back in 2021, Ambassador, you were interviewed on television and you did not mince words after learning that there are fixers for passport appointments. Have they been nailed by the time PRRD's term ended?
Oh, yes, yeah.
They did.
I know there were, that was, it's the easiest thing to do. It's time consuming. Those who man our passport centers. But really, how can you deny them that? How can you play with that to make money? That's again a constitutional right. You can't travel without a passport. So they're entitled to that. No, I wouldn't allow that.
So they wouldn't do. They would
I
do
know.
anything.
I'm sure they had people in cahoots within the DFA, but we sidelined them.
Oh, that's good.
Are there unfinished business? I mean, had there been more time for you to be
No,
secretary?
no, everything. My time was taken up, and it ended just in time. End of COVID. Finished. And then, of course, my last during that time, I tried to work out with my counterpart there was a memorandum of understanding on the joint development of oil and gas, and I really Chinese diplomats like Wang Yi are quite an act, really hard to follow. So I had my there was going to be a joint understanding in the previous my predecessor.
Yeah.
So when I came on the job, and then he came over, and they said, "Oh, there's supposed to be one." So I crafted one, and then and there were supposed to be two: memorandum on Belt and Road, memorandum on oil and gas. So we were there. The media was there, and I met him. I took a liking to him at once, and I said, "Would you consider a memorandum of signing memorandum on the joint development of oil and gas?" And he just went and signed it. That's it. When somebody takes that initiative, then he said, "Okay, there's another memorandum on Belt and Road. I think you've gone over. Would you consider signing that, us joining the Belt and Road?" And I said, "No, I will not consider it, not at all. I'll sign it right here and now." So and it went very well. We went as far as we could, but you must understand that there are other influences in China. And so as we go this far, and then they say, "Oh no, you have to go back."
Was that always the case, a quid pro quo in the relations between the Philippines and China?
That was
During your term, I mean.
yes, if it was possible. Yeah, but when it came to the memorandum of understanding, the Americans came over, and I hadn't not even met. And the Undersecretary of Energy said, "Where is this MOU that you did?"
The Americans.
Yeah, so she was in my room, so I gave it to her. Just passed it around. "Hey, this is really good. My God, really? You like it?" "Absolutely. This really works." "Then I'll make one for you right now."
So
And she said, "No, don't bother. You're too small. You're too small for American oil and gas." Yeah, that's the truth.
that's
This is there's my face like that.
That's straightforward.
But yeah, it's just too small. When America does oil and gas, it's the scale of Kazakhstan. You know how America is the superpower of the planet, maybe for the next 100,000 years. You can't help it. When they do something, it's big. And they just, "Pichugin naman ito." And she said, "Why don't you see this little Texas oil companies?" I said, "Well, you know, when I was young, my uncle put me on the board of an oil company, and we were dealing with the little ones, the little Texas drillers." "You know, it's probably with the little ones. The drill is very short." But still nothing. I bring this up because, you know, when I brought this up to with other Americans, and they said, "Wow, what a thing to say." Because, yeah, you only have so much. We're not famous for oil and gas, right? God did not give us the right geography. I said that to another country that also had no oil and gas, and I said, "You know what? It's a mark that God loves us. Why? Gives us nothing." That's why you and I are like this. They didn't like that. They're very religious. But anyway, the thing with that oil and gas is, it's only worth so much. But these other guys told me, you know, supposing an American company went there, they won't ask that, because they won't look at the share they'll get from the little oil and gas that's out there. Instead, they'll tell the U.S. government, hey, we're gonna make real friends with these Filipinos. You know, we're like this. We gotta work together, etc. There's not much there, but we're gonna be work together. So therefore, over there in that huge oil field we have, how about giving them huge tax incentives? That's what they tell the government. It won't be here. How can you give tax incentives? See, it's small. But there, yeah. This is, I'm afraid that wasn't very sincere, the American told me. Because that's how they play the game. You know, you do a little oil and gas for diplomacy, and you're rewarded in real money
Real money.
elsewhere. Anyway,
But
so
you
there we
have,
are now.
you have Caltex and Shell in Manampaya.
Shell has sold out. I believe it's over, right? They sold out because it's running out already. We have a few more years, but if we are able to develop the oil and gas, then you can connect that to Malampaya, and it's easier to get out, to take out the oil. That's. However, there's a new decision of the Supreme Court making it more strict, but actually it's already in my memorandum of understanding. The ruling law is Philippines. That's all there is. And then there are little things like, you know, the Chinese were also came forward. Okay, in that case, can we have a no prejudice clause? I said, yeah, I used to do that as a lawyer. What it means, a no prejudice clause is extreme example. Supposing I'm a Chinese working in the oil rig. I'm so tired that I actually put on a Filipino uniform. You're not going to take a picture of him and then go to court and say, see, they accept our sovereignty. No, you don't do that. On the other hand, the Filipino is so tired, time to raise our flag, and he raises the Chinese flag. They can't take a picture of that and say, see, they gave up because we have a no prejudice clause. Whatever happens on that rig will never be invoked for or against anyone's claim or right. That's just the most civilized thing to do. It came from them. But then, as I said, political power shifts even in China. And the hardliners sometimes would step in. And the softliners on my side would sometimes step in, but I usually slap them away. So that's really what it was. But it would have been a good partnership.
Could have been, yes.
May we have your thoughts, Ambassador, on the ruling of the Supreme Court? It's the recent
Oh, I haven't
ruling.
studied that. I'm sorry, but as a lawyer, we always have to read the decision. But I saw it. It came out.
And
But I think basically any violation of the principle that the governing law must be Philippine law. And I think at that time they thought just looking to see the possibilities, so between Vietnam, China, and the Philippines in the area would not violate that principle of governing law. It would be just a scan. But the Supreme Court said no. Even a scan, the minute it scans our territory, you're exploring. Now, whether there's anything there or not, exploration falls under Philippine law with the minute you cross.
you are a coveted lawyer, Ambassador, and you were nominated twice to be Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. Why decline? Why did you decline?
I didn't decline.
I
I was so eager for it. Yeah, and I qualified. My grades were good, and but at the end, nothing happened. The final act was aborted.
Okay, so it was not a.
No, my God, that's every lawyer's dream is to end up in the Supreme Court. That's when you can sit back and think and think and think. So it's a great position.
Okay, so we're about to wrap up, Ambassador. It was a very interesting discussion. I didn't notice the time.
Can't have enough of
Yeah.
the ambassador.
Yes. As a former Secretary of Foreign Affairs, you had your own brand of diplomacy, one that represents the true value of independent foreign policy. So what do you hope to achieve as ambassador to Great Britain? Are there any particular objectives
Well,
that
one is
you have set for yourself?
I'm the messenger for a relationship between the Philippines and the United Kingdom. I do know one thing, and this is I've told our friends back in London. I said, don't forget that the three Marcos children grew up in London, and they friends of Charles, King Charles. They grew up there. So let's not, sit on our ass and actually think we know more than them, because they can't. They actually lived it. They went through the public school system, which builds character, and in every respect, they understand the English mindset. So I have a boss that will be hard to please, and I thought that all of us will have to do that, because he knows that's his territory.
So to cap this interesting conversation, may we have your last words for our viewers?
Well, as I said, my principal mission there will be to take care of our people, those who have brought us so much honor, the nurses of the United Kingdom, Filipino nurses of the United Kingdom.
And indeed, our ambassador is always the maverick and quick-witted. Truly, it's never dull and never ordinary. I remember a former senator said during a sponsorship speech at the Commission of Appointments for your confirmation, sabi niya, yung sarcastic na, masarap pa rin pakinggan. At excited ka pa rin marinig ang susunod na sasabihin.
That's what we have.
End of quote.
So thank you so much for your time, Mr. Ambassador. All the best on your new journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Ambassador. And, 1 hour is not enough. I mean, I guess you still have to cut that. You said you have reduced that, 5 minutes or 3 minutes to a little shorter.
Yeah, that's right. I owe that to Gabi Lopez. He's the one who said, after 2.5 minutes, nobody's interested.
But then we were interested. We're listening to you and we learned so much.
We're just conversing, but remember, we're present to each other.
Yes.
But a screen, you can stand up, and then you will not come back.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. And